But tonight's talk is on raw pregnancy, so I don't know if you guys are planning on falling pregnant, or just here because you have nothing else to do tonight, or have been following Baron's blog and were curious about seeing her and hearing what we went through. To begin with, I wanted to tell you this evening that we certainly are not experts in this field. If anything, we're real novices. So do not, under any circumstance, take what I say tonight as gospel truth. You should never take that as truth, no matter who's talking to you, actually. Because we're all about personal experience, and what works for us may not work for you. So I'm going to give you guys our story, what worked for us, what I found, and we found through our research. I urge you to look into it further, because obviously any decisions you make about your own body, but also the body of a child's, can have far-reaching consequences. So it's got to be something that you really come to because it really works for you and is right for you, not because some guy stood up on some stage and said this is what you should or shouldn't do. What I will be giving you tonight is a bit of a contrary perspective to what you might get out there. Primarily because I found initially in looking at pregnancy that there's so little info out there, and the gynaes and even some of the midwives really just don't give you all the information. So I did a lot of digging for myself. That's because I come from a background of questioning. I believe that without questioning we can't make any efficient and effective progress in the direction we want to move in. And obviously we didn't want to make any mistakes with our little one. So I wanted to know exactly. I didn't take anyone's word for it. I researched it myself. If someone said you should do this, I went, oh really, why? And I researched it. There was no, oh, okay, you said I should, so I'll do it. And so often people just give their power away, especially when they become pregnant. It's like, I don't know what to do. You tell me. It happens with disease, illness, and I'll talk about it later. Pregnancy is not a disease, it's not an illness. It's completely natural. So many people treat it like that. So we basically question anything that didn't appear obvious to us and wasn't in its natural form. And tonight I'll stick with our Rawlicious concept and really take it down to its simplicity. What is natural? What is unnatural? What made sense to us? What was obvious? And we ran with that, because I do believe that we've been having children for a very long time. Not us personally, but us as a species. And it's only very recently that medical science has come along and said, oh, you must do it like this. And it's also only recently that we've got the problems we're having with children. So there's an issue in the way things are happening today. And we certainly uncovered some things that would suggest that. Okay. But to begin with, I'll start with this slide. Slideshow works. There we go. So we're here tonight talking about this thanks to Katara Eden, our little baby girl who's at the back, falling asleep. You may hear her squeaking a little later. She wants to put in her word. Otherwise she's listening, floating around the room checking us out. I will talk for her. We weren't exactly sure that we were interested in having children this time around. And at some point it just dawned on us that what a waste. We've been cleansing and detoxifying, working on giving ourselves the best bodies ever for 7 years. Sure, what conduits could we be for a being who wants to come in with a head start? So we thought, well, we might as well, use our bodies for what they're designed for. And we did, and it worked. And she's great, she smiles a lot. This photo was taken the day after she was born. How about that? So when they say kids don't smile, they do. But they're not going to smile if they've been yanked out by the sunroof and then been stuffed in a little plastic box and been shoved full of needles and slapped around. I mean, who's going to smile after that? So kids do smile. It's just that if they come out properly, lovingly, in the right setting, circumstances, you get a totally different result. And it's small tweaks that make the difference. Okay. So I've got a lot of different things I want to cover. If you came along thinking that you were just going to get nutritional advice, it's like this much of the talk tonight, because so much of pregnancy, childbirth and post is not actually about food. As so much of our life and actualizing ourselves as spirits is not about food. Food is just a tool, a technique, one of the principles that we use to start living a better life. But there's just so much other info, and I'll see how much of it I can get through, because I really have crammed in a lot. Okay, but let's see. Before we start, you've got a question. Anything. Before you start anything. Because unless you've asked a question, you can't be changing, because you just be doing the thing you're doing. So with questioning pregnancy and childbirth, it's good to question before you actually fall pregnant. Because often once you're in it, it's like a roller coaster ride. You know, you shove from one person to the next person, family member, friend, telling you this, telling you that, scare stories, bad stories, fear programs, and often people just get funneled down a path that they actually never wanted to be on until they realize, wow, it's too late. So it's good to question before. And we started questioning many, many years before. Definitely look at avoiding the fear, because there's a lot of fear around childbirth, especially, and pregnancy and beyond. As I said, we've been doing this for a very long time without any experts telling us what to do. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but listening to yourself is key. Trusting your own body. It knows, it has an innate knowledge, as any being that is born onto this planet has. It's just that we've forgotten about that, because our Western technocratic perspective makes us believe that we don't know anything unless we've read it out of a book or learned it at a university. Whereas most of the things that really matter, we know. How do we know? Well, we just do. It's in us. You know, like we know how to breathe. And those sorts of things don't really have to be questioned, but they get warped and twisted by the system in order to make you believe that you actually don't know, so that you can give up your power so someone else can control you and milk you for cash, basically. So we're going to talk about breastfeeding later, but at some point you can say, you know what, I don't feel like being a cow for the system. And you can shift into trusting yourself again. It's a little bit of a poke, you know, but it's something that I've seen. It's like, trust me, I'm a doctor. You know, people still believe that today, and there are many really good doctors out there doing great work in teaching people about how to heal their bodies from the inside. Sadly, what I found in the obstetrics world is that's not the case. They know everything and you know nothing, and please do not question anything, otherwise you must find yourself someone else to work with. Yeah. And we were quite lucky to work with some amazing people throughout pregnancy too. But I've heard stories of many people who get just, this is the way to do it. So the first main, primary, essential thing to look at in pregnancy is the fact that we have to detox. And not just detox physically. And I've got a whole detox talk, which I give every few months, 2 weeks ago, so I'll go into a lot more detail then. But basically, we have to be prepared. We have to prepare our being, we have to dump out the junk that we've accumulated for decades. That is the key preparation. For me, conscious conception is nothing more or less than consciously preparing your body so that it's in the best state it can possibly be to bring forth this new life, to give it the best start it can possibly have. Whereas most people are just like, oh, I fell pregnant, and they have no more thought than that. You know, no pre-thoughts, seriously. It can take 7 years for you to have a complete, full detox. You know, we detoxed for basically 7 years before we fell pregnant. And you can do it even longer. Now, for many of you, 7 years, that's a long time to wait if you want to fall pregnant. If you take proper steps in the right direction, there are many great things you can do right now, cleansing procedures and protocols. Within a couple of months, maybe a year, I would say you could be in a position where you would have dropped off most of that load. And there are obviously tests you can do. You can test heavy metals, see what's happening in your bloodstream, see how many toxins you're carrying. It's amazing how many people won't detox if it's just for themselves. But suddenly if a child's involved, then they'll do it. So it's a great opportunity for us to actually get off our butts and do something about the health of our body when it's going to be the body of another child. The reason I'm so adamant about this is that babies are literally the dumping ground for your toxicity. So when a woman gets pregnant, all of the toxins that are floating around in her tissues, in her bloodstream, are absorbed by the baby and pulled out by the baby. So just falling pregnant by itself is a cleanse for you, for the mother. Because by its nature, baby will suck it all out of you. Now, most people don't realize that. They think that the placenta is some kind of barrier that stops all of this stuff getting through. It's absolutely no barrier for the toxins that are around in our society right now. Thousands and thousands and thousands of chemicals. So we need to be aware of that. I have pulled off some of the research just to show you guys I mean, I'll give you recommended reading afterward, but there's a lot of really good scientific validated research out there to back up what I'm saying. And I'm not just sucking this out of some orifice. For example, there was a research done that looked into toxic chemicals found in umbilical cord blood. Now, cord blood is baby's blood. There's no difference. They try and make people think that cord blood is somehow special kind of blood, but it's just the baby's blood. It circulates from the baby into the placenta and back into the baby again through the cord. And they found that out of 400 chemicals tested, there were 287 were detected in cord blood. And out of that 287, 180 caused cancer in humans, 217 are toxic to the brain and nervous system, and 208 cause birth defects. That's a published study. Dumping ground. There are more toxins in our environment now than ever before. We have to be aware of this when we're thinking of falling pregnant. So scientists call this body burden for the new child. And every Westerner or anyone on the planet living today has a radical body burden because of the junk they eat, the chemicals they use on their skin, and the chemicals they use in their house, and the chemicals they eat from their food. So just to acknowledge and be aware of that, we can do something about it. They said that they could only test for 400 chemicals, but if they had tested for more, they likely would have found a lot more than 287. So this study is just the tip of the iceberg in what actually exists in terms of toxic body burden. So baby does try to help. It initiates what's called morning sickness. Baby goes, hang on a moment, too much toxicity in here, you need to get some of it out. And the quickest way is obviously either orifice. So a woman gets sick. First trimester, sick all the time often. I believe we had one evening of morning sickness. And that wasn't really even morning sickness, it's the next point I'm getting to. So you absolutely don't have to go through any morning sickness if your body is cleansed sufficiently. Because that's really all it is. The mom tries to help. The mom's body, very clever, realizes baby coming along, so there's a great jump in sensitivity, in receptivity, and heightened awareness. So the mom becomes aware of what food will and won't work for her. It's amazing. When Baron was pregnant, she just knew this would work, this wouldn't work, and she ate the foods that worked for her. And it's being able to trust that gut instinct, because your body will tell you what it is that will work for you.
Can you give some examples of what they were?
So at one point she got an absolute craving for oranges. And I walked into the kitchen once and there was just orange carnage. Like half oranges all over the counter. I was like, what's happening? The first craving. Other things, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about it later, especially in the first trimester. She didn't want rich food. So not too many fatty foods. She didn't want chocolate. She didn't want rich green juices with lots of different greens in it. She wanted simple things. Like almost like mono dieting, just one thing at a time. That's what the body wanted. But it's also going to be different for each person. So, food cravings come along, like I've just said. So there are two aspects to food cravings. You crave what you're detoxing, and you also crave what you need. How do you tell the difference? I mean, that's a hard one. And I mean, it's actually a difficult one for me to even say, because unless you've gone through some kind of cleansing process before, unless you've already gone down the road of a cleansing diet and shifting your lifestyle for a little while before, it may be very hard to tell the difference between the two. Once you're off the addict bandwagon, which is the addiction to refined foods, refined flour, refined wheat, processed dairy, soft drinks, all that kind of garbage, once you're off that bandwagon, then your body's natural systems for what's working and not working for you come online more effectively. Until that point, your body's literally dumbed out. So you can't actually differentiate what it is that you're craving or detoxing. Is what you're craving a detox, or is it actually something you need? And that's why I highly recommend detoxing as much as you can before. Getting off all the processed junk, garbage, highly addictive foods first. Because then you have a chance when the craving comes up to know, am I really craving that highly processed, dodgy colored like meat? Maybe not. Maybe it's just something detoxing out of my system. Because when you've done a detox, and you've done detoxing for a while, you notice that's exactly what happens. Last week I did a week-long liquid fast and colon cleanse, and it was amazing. I didn't have any cravings whatsoever. but I've done many of them over the years. But the first few I did, it was incredible what kind of cravings came up. Cravings for foods I hadn't eaten for years. You know, until every vestige of that molecule is out of your system, it's going to call you, say, "Ooh, add me back in." You know, it's like it wants to stay in, it wants to hook in. So be aware of that, because often women are given this license. You're pregnant, eat whatever you like. And they do. They think it's like free reign, binge time. I'm not only growing my body, I'm growing my baby's body. And like the baby's like this big. No, but I have to eat for my baby. But your baby's like the size of your thumb. You know, and even when your baby is ready to come out, it's maybe 4 kilos. I mean, how much food do you have to eat to grow a 4-kilo baby? Not very much. Most of that baby's water, as you're mostly water. So it's quite a myth that you have to suddenly eat so much more. But often what happens is the body needs more nutrition because it's missing key nutrients that that baby needs to develop properly. And so your hunger kicks in big time. And if people haven't been exposed to the Rawlicious lifestyle, have been exposed to the idea behind mineralization as a hunger antidote, then you don't know what to eat. And nothing will satiate you. But it's the minerals. I'm going to get into food a little bit later. Then we have emotional detoxing. This is often a surprise for people. But pregnant ladies often experience this because they're so much more sensitive. You know, the emotional system is far more sensitive. And the reason this is coming up is for them to release old patterns that they're holding on to. Old fear patterns, debilitating perspectives about themselves that won't serve them in the birth process. You know, negative things that they think about themselves. This stuff has to go because your baby wants to come to get love. And if you're blocked from giving yourself love, it's going to be very hard to give the baby love. So the body, the emotional body, is trying to shed as much of this garbage as it can. So you allow the emotions to come up. You cry through it. You release it. Let it go. Don't bottle it up. Don't hold it in. Don't think, "Oh, I'm a wreck." Let it go. It will go. Trust in the process. That is such a key thing there. Trust in your body's innate awareness of what it needs for this journey. Because it knows. Also make sure you don't put yourselves in situations that could, you know, rub you up the wrong way. If certain friends or family members, you know, can cause issues for you, stay away from them. Don't go near them. It's not worth upsetting yourself. Your baby takes all of that emotional energy and imprints it into itself while it's in utero. So any negative emotions you experience, it imprints, and it has to then deal with in its own life. So we want to give them as much of a head start as possible by keeping our emotional state positive and balanced. That is absolutely key.